afternoon. Welcome to the 12th Annual Scholarly Speaking Program. And can you believe that we initiated this program in 2005? So this is a tradition that we have every year. I'm Sarah Thomas, and I'm the director of the Haase Library and Learning Center. I'm delighted to see you today. Thank you so much for coming. We believe that Prescott Campus authors deserve recognition from the learning community, and each year we honor you to provide a celebration for you. Haase Library has a commitment to supporting the academic works of Embry-Riddle Prescott, not only through this event, but also through Scholarly Commons, the Embry-Riddle University's institutional repository. I invite you to submit your publications to the Scholarly Commons and to selected works. Please see the brochure inserted in your program. Please contact David Ahrensberger back there for assistance. This program and bibliography would not be possible without the dedication of the committee members. David Ahrensberger, Chair, Linda Eisner, Joanne Evanoff, Kathy Hill, Laura Pope Robbins, Susie Roth, and Patricia Watkins. Let's show our appreciation for their hard work to produce this program. Now, I'd like to introduce our Chancellor, Dr. Ayers, who will give the welcome.
You all are very, very far away. I don't know why we have a 5-mile gulf between here and there. Today's about celebrating our faculty who are excellent in really all respects, in the classroom, in publication, in mentoring, and more than that, in caring. I should share with you, I saw there's a study called by Noel Levitz that's done every couple of years that shows student satisfaction in the university. Without getting into a lot of detail, I would share with you that student satisfaction on the campus is the highest in the university across the board. Yeah, and that's because we actually, yeah, it's worth some applause, yeah. And I think that's because of the experience that our students have in the classroom. I think it's the support they get from our Haase Library and Learning staff. I think it's from our student life, our Dean of Students office. I think it's from everybody here. Today's celebrating one piece of that, which is that the additions that we make through the body of knowledge in our disciplines, by our academic work, and by doing scholarship, we also keep ourselves current in our discipline. We make ourselves more current for our students. We don't let, I always say we don't teach students about our past, we teach them about their future. And by doing scholarship and by doing research, we learn about our future and their future, and we share that with them. So today's a celebration of that, and I'm kind of looking forward to celebrating. I understand we have a couple great speakers here today, and we're looking forward to that. So I will get off the stage, and I guess the speakers, do they have to go way back up there again? Okay. Thanks, Sarah.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Ayers. This year, we have a bibliography produced with 32 authors. Please note that the program includes citations for the calendar year 2016, only from those authors who submitted them. This is not an official or complete list. I know of several authors who are not included. Today, I'm excited to present those authors who have works published or papers presented in the year 2016. Dr. Bloom, our Chief Academic Officer, will come forth and recognize you for your publication. When I call your name, please come up to the front. Please hold your applause to the end and then circle around that way. Okay, Mehran Andalibi, College of Engineering. Hold your applause. Autonomous systems, computer vision, machine learning are his research areas. Ghazal Barari, College of Engineering. Her research areas are combustion modeling, HCCI engines, quantum chemical calculations. You want to? Okay, we can applaud. Okay, yes. Don't hold it in. Okay, Dina Battaglia, Center for Teaching and Learning Excellence. Master Teaching, Authentic Teaching and Assessment, Application of Positive Psychology to the Teaching and Learning Environment. Dr. Richard Bloom, College Security and Intelligence, Profiling, Terrorism, Risk Assessment, Counterintelligence, Critiques of Postmodernism, Post-Structuralism, Psychological Assessment, and Hermeneutics, Historical Narrative.
I just want to make sure that Dr. Zieber here gets credit for being co-author. Thank you very much.
Ann Betcher, Undergraduate Research Institute and Honors Program. Her research areas, undergraduate research, ecological sociology. Brent Bowen, Dean of College of Aviation, Department Aeronautical Science, Measurement of Airline Operational Performance and Quality, Collegiate Aviation Education and Scholarship, Research Methods in Aviation. And Dr. Aaron Bowen is not able to be with us today. And Ron Carr, College of Aviation, research areas, aviation physiology, and crew resource management.
I just have to say one thing. My research, I guess, is more in the classification of expertise, because all I did was give interviews. You did very well.
J. Furman Daniel III. Is he here? I didn't see him come in. Nick Devereaux. Hillary Eaton. Did she come? I didn't see her. Cindy Greenman. I saw her come. Okay, college, arts and sciences, research areas, accounting ethics. John Haas. College, Security and Intelligence, Department, Cyber Intelligence and Security Department Chair, and research areas, cybersecurity, securing the Internet of Things. And congratulations on your recent tenure, Dr. Haas. James Helbling. I didn't see him. Timothy Holt. College of Aviation, research areas, aviation safety, accident investigation, airport management, anti-terrorism, aviation flight training and education, aviation human factors, military operations management, strategic management. Dorothea Ivanova. Oh, I thought I saw her come. Curtis James. Well, Geoffrey Jensen, one of our speakers today. College. College, Security and Intelligence, research areas, War and Society, Race and the Military, Race and Politics, Cold War History, American Foreign Policy, Chinese history, history of the American War in Vietnam, and Southern American history. And congratulations on your promotion to associate professor with tenure. Casey Lawler, is she here? And Jackie Lutke. College of Aviation, Aviation Safety, Aviation Management, Effects of Marketing in Aviation, Service Quality in Aviation, Women's Contributions to Aviation, Retention Issues, Pedagogical Issues in Higher Education. And congratulations for promotion to full professor. And Juan Merkt. College of Aviation, Research Areas, Energy Management Training, Human Factors, Aviation Safety, Aviation Education, and Accreditation. Kaela Martin. College of Engineering, Research Areas, Satellite Dynamics, Engineering Education. Sarah Nelson. College of Aviation, Research Areas, Aviation, Space, Unmanned Aerial Systems Law. Nika Nordbrock. College, Arts and Sciences, Research Area, Cowboy Poetry, Composition, and Diversity. Thank you. Jenna Perry. College of Aviation, Flight Simulation Training, Education, Pedagogical Studies, and Human Factors. Ed Post. Oh, there you are. Okay, College of Engineering. Research Areas, Design and Optimization of Planar Microwave Circuits and Devices, Engineering Education. Tim Sestak. College of Aviation, Research Area, Wingsuits. Sam Seward. College of Engineering, Research Areas, Software-Defined Computational Photometry. Mark Sinclair. College of Aviation, Research Areas, Synoptic and Dynamic Meteorology.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Lance Traub. Okay. And Jules Yemga. College of Arts and Sciences, Research Areas, Industrial Organization, Applied Econometrics, Development, Economics, Economics. Okay, Air Transportation. Okay, Johnny Young. College of Aviation, Research Areas, UAS Integration into the NAS, Industrial Application with UAS. Let's have a round of applause to recognize all of our recipients. Thank you, Dr. Bloom. Thank you. Our first guest speaker this year will be Geoffrey Jensen, Dr. Geoffrey Jensen, from the College of Security and Intelligence.
Hi all, thank you for coming and for the opportunity to discuss briefly, and I promise to be brief because I have students here and my little girl right there. Yeah, see how you redirect? I work in CSI, I just totally, and then I could snake off, right? my recent scholarship with you. I thought that perhaps the best way to share it with you was to explain how my study of race in the American military has helped me personally wrestle with a bigger question of my field. And that question is pretty old, and that is, what is history? Edward Hallett Carr posed the question, what is history, in 1961, and it remains as relevant today as it was then. Carr was not the first or the last to put the question to the test. Today, I'm going to take a shot at defining what it means for me in my work. History is not a science. I like saying that when there's scientists present. It's not. Sure, it's housed within the social sciences, but history really is a humanities field. Still, we rely heavily on the scientific method to make our contentions and our connotations. And fine, I can admit, some in my profession are masters of quantitative or qualitative methods of inquiry. But for my money, history is not a hard and fast science. It is a bit more nebulous than that. At least, in my opinion, it is. Others will disagree with me. And that, you see, is in my mind what makes history so fascinating. The various views that exist about it. And when I say views, I mean those we can deem legitimate, that use evidence to make their points astutely, as opposed to those who manipulate sources blatantly to make their cases. Why is it not a science? I tend not to think of it as scientific because I'm not sure that history is formulaic or as formulaic as the scientific method demands or would like it to be. It is and is not an art. Do not misunderstand me. I believe that history is artistic. It requires a bit of creativity to create a work of history. You are, after all, coming after the fact and are writing about a past subject while living in the present. And even if you happen to be alive during that period under review and had knowledge of the issue, you would still be writing from the present, not the past point of view. I would also add this. I believe not unlike Edward Lawrence, yes, meteorologists, I mentioned Edward Lawrence, and the butterfly effect, and the litany of Hollywood time travel movies dominated by its premise, that a present-natured opinion based on facts can change the way we view the past. Yes, historians can alter the past. For clarity's sake, I mean specifically how we interpret it, not everything that happened during it, nor do I mean the fabrication of the past to suit our needs or to create some sort of conspiratorial tract, such as those charlatans in the world that make ridiculous claims, such as the Holocaust never happened, or that FDR let Pearl Harbor get bombed, or that LBJ is responsible for the death of John Fitzgerald Kennedy, or any other general malarkey peddled by so-called experts. I'm not opinionated. I mean that historians write about the past from the perspective of their own time. As a result, they are susceptible to the opinions, cultural norms, beliefs, and nuances of their time and age, which as a result has a direct impact on how we view the past today. No one, no living or deceased forebear of my profession, has maintained indefinitely sole dominion or domination over a historical interpretation, though some have maintained sway for decades. It is my opinion, which is based on training, writing, experience, all mind you within my own lifetime, that history is rewritten for every generation, and thus it is slanted to the views of that time. It has and always shall be that way. Take Carr's feelings on the matter into consideration. Carr once mused, "The facts are available to the historian in documents, inscriptions, and so on. Like fish on the fishmonger's slab, the historian collects them, takes them home, and cooks them and serves them in whatever style appeals to him, or, I should say, her." So what kind of historian am I? That's a good question. I am a war and society, or if you prefer the older term, a new military history specialist, or all the things Sarah said a minute ago that I forgot I put on my bio long ago. New military history emerged out of the social history movement of the 1960s and 70s. In many ways, new military history was a challenge to the drums and trumpets school of historical thought that largely focused on big battles, campaigns, the major leaders, and the general waging of war. When we as a profession say war in society, we really mean military and society. Still confused? Let a military intellectual clarify it for you. Karl von Clausewitz, the great Prussian theorist and, a technical term is coming, grand poobah of Western military thought, once mused that, quote, war is the continuation of politics by other means. I feel similarly that war in society history is the continuation of social history by other means. Through the examination of the military, scholars of this ilk, my ilk, can examine issues of race, gender, sexuality, economics, politics, foreign policy, ideology, and religion, among other subjects, all through the lens of the military. In the introduction of my first book, I wrestled with this idea a bit as I applied it to the various views of the contributors on the issue of race in the military. As some of you may know, I teach the SIS 535 Research Methods class for the College of Security and Intelligence Master's Degree Program. As of late, therefore, I've been exploring who I am as a historian to help our graduate students come to grips with what historical research looked, sounded like, tasted like. I examined and continue to examine why I studied things the way I do, why the issue of race in military mattered to me. I discovered that it came from my life in the American Armed Forces. First as an Army brat, where I had black, white, Asian, and other friends from all over the world, and never considered or postulated as a boy why or how that was possible. It just seemed right. Furthermore, my desire to study this field came from my own service in the National Guard. Lest you think I was some sort of erudite scholar as a young soldier, let me dispel that myth right here and now. When I was 19 years old in the front-leaning rest position in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, alongside African Americans, Asian Americans, and Latin American recruits, I never thought about why or how it was possible that I was in a traditionally Southern state serving in the military with people who were not white either. All I thought about, all we thought about, was surviving basic training. And we did survive, together. And that right there might be the reason it was possible to change our nation's view on minority service. Whether it be a matter of race, gender, or sexuality, a common reference point was needed. The common reference, we as those that came before us, were all Americans. These experiences, along with the guidance of my mentor back at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville, Professor Randall Woods, led me to my dissertation, which focused on the racial integration of the American Armed Forces. With that project, I had no idea that I was stepping off into a larger realm, one that would shape and guide my career, and likely to the finish. A distinguished member of my dissertation committee mentioned at the time, "You have found quite the little niche." At first, I didn't understand entirely the gist of what he was saying, but I do now. The answer to Carr's question for me is this. I study war and society history, in particular the question of race relations, social uplift, and more as it applies to the American Armed Forces, because I can go in any direction I choose with it. I'm not just a racial historian, an African American historian, or a military scholar. I am these and more. I am therefore not confined to a small intellectual pond. I'm in an ocean. The vastness can be overwhelming and daunting and draining at times, especially when you have an 8-month-old. But I welcome the challenge of it. It can and has taken me to new places, to discover new ideas, and gain the confidence to tackle new projects that I likely would not have entertained on my own. It took me to my first book, the Routledge Handbook of the History of Race in the American Military, a work that includes chapters from 20 authors, including myself, who addressed the greater issue of what race meant to them and how that shaped the American military, or how it, the American military, shaped the issue and our understanding of race. In my contribution, I explore the moment when Harry S. Truman, a Southerner, baptized in the sociological trappings of the Jim Crow era of segregation, decided to racially integrate the American Armed Forces. For us, it's just words on a page, but I would ask you to go back and, well, be Harry Truman for a minute and catch the political backlash that came with that, let alone the social backlash that came with being a white Southerner and being argued that you're a traitor to your cause and class and race. In closing, I recently conversed with a scholar who lamented the fact that a colleague only produced research directly related to his dissertation. In essence, this colleague never went beyond it. I can understand his concerns as it applies to never growing beyond what you first learned. Being a scholar means you keep going. In respect to him, though, I would postulate this rebuttal. What if it was the foundation of a career? What if you found your niche? What if it and the works you produced because of it helped you to define for your students and yourself what is history? Thank you so much.
Are there any questions?
I have a question. So back in around 1916, Henry Ford was quoted in the Chicago Tribune. The quote was, "History is bunk, and the only history worth anything at all is the history we make today." So if he's right, how come you're writing bunk books?
I'm writing fake history, I guess. Francis Fukuyama also thought history ended after the end of the Cold War, too. That there was no new history, that history was dead. I'm not sure if that's the case, or I'll be out of the publishing business really, really, really fast. That's a tough question. I mean, when I say that I think every generation writes its own history, I mean that. I think just as the generation of Henry Ford wrote their history and probably accepted some of the things that he was doing, especially later during the Great Depression, as acceptable, but others would come back years later, especially those who might have a pro-unionist leaning, especially in the era of the New Deal, 1930s, 1940s, where we saw a sort of backlash against the treatment of, say, workers towards industry, might have a differing view. I think if we accept history as bunk, then why are we here? Our species demands that we go forward. I mean, that's what we do. We keep adapting, we keep changing. I think part of the reason I love military history so much, or at least the way I approach it, I mean, don't get me wrong, I grew up on all the military books, I grew up on Stephen Ambrose, I grew up wanting to write about big battles, but the thing that captivated me the most about the profession and about history in general was it offered me an opportunity to see things differently. And more importantly, it demonstrates to me continuously when I talk to my students and I teach to my students and I drone home at night at home about it with my wife while we're trying to get the kid to sleep. It can be inclusive. History taught in the 1940s would largely not talk about African Americans, Hispanics, women. Today, I think we have this backlash in society where it comes to approaching things from a minority perspective, and it's seen as a political thing. I would say this: you're seeing the story now from different angles. It doesn't mean anybody's story is lesser than. And it's an opportunity to go further. So with respect to Henry Ford, and I'm a big lover of Ford Motor Company. I used to have a Mustang, and then I realized baby seats don't fit in Mustangs. He's wrong. We can keep learning. We can keep going. And just because we re-examine the past from a different angle doesn't mean we're cheapening it any. Unless it's totally fraudulent, then that's totally different. So it's a good question. Anyone else? It's the power of red shirt, isn't it? I'm so surprised Aurora stayed quiet. Look at
Follow-up brief question. Does history have a purpose? Is it teleological?
I have to say yes. Right, especially for those student loans that I'm still paying, I better say yes. Yes. History's purpose is this. It's an opportunity to re-examine the past, every generation, to glean from it. The one thing I despise, and I think most historians despise, is this notion that history repeats itself. That's just ridiculous. I mean, there's never going to be anything like Pearl Harbor again, at least not for the United States. 9/11 was its own moment its own tragedy, its own event. There are similarities. There's things we can learn. Certainly from Pearl Harbor, there were things we could have learned and that sadly weren't applied during 9/11. Our wars won't be fought the same way. The way we look at war won't be the same way. I venture to say for the most part, most of us have not been part of tin, scrap, or oil rationing drive. Some of you might have. But for the most part, the generations that wage war today won't. History is a chance to learn, grow, and apply it as well as we can to the events we face today. It won't give you the direct answer every time. I wish it did. If it did, I might be working in DC right now. Who knows? Maybe I will be before it's all said and done. I don't want to. I don't want to go. But the reality is this. If we don't take the time to study what we've done, where we've failed, where we've succeeded, maybe not taking ourselves too seriously, but take ourselves seriously enough, we won't grow. You have to do that. I was telling my students earlier today, be careful of isms, not to get rid of them because some isms are good, some are bad. It's this era of extremes. That's the danger. Too much one way, too much the other. Not really paying attention to why that is and learning from it. So that's where I think it is. History's like the sage guide that's there, tells you there's these two doors in front of you, you got to choose which one, tells you about all the things that happened in the past, thanks you, doffs the cap, and walks the other way. And leaves the choice up to you. Unless you elect a historian as President of the United States, which you've done before. His name was Woodrow Wilson.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Jensen. Our second speaker will be Kaela Martin, Dr. Kaela Martin from the College of Engineering.
Thank you, Sarah, and the rest of the committee for, I guess, asking me or telling me to do this presentation. If you don't know, my name's Dr. Kaela Martin. I'm in the Aerospace Engineering Department. My chair's here. Thanks, Mark. So's the dean. Woohoo! But thank you guys all for coming out for this. The talk that I wanted to give today kind of is a little bit more, well, I hope it's personal because people like personal stories. And it's about research transitions. So if you don't know me, this is my second year, so my fourth semester here. And last year was a bit of a transition. So it was a transition from a student, so that's me and my family, my in-laws, which I do like, and my parents and my sister. She's older than me. And then going from a graduate student to being a faculty member, that's my first lab class there. They were all happy at that point because they were finished with me. Yes. It was also a transition last year going from discipline-specific research and a bit of a foray into more of engineering education research or scholarly research on teaching and learning. I said that wrong. But one of the papers that I wrote last year was titled Method to Maintain Artificial Gravity During Transfer Maneuvers for Tethered Spacecraft, which sounds really complicated and really boring because engineering, we like boring titles. So essentially what this is the idea of if you've got a spacecraft and you're going to Mars, you need artificial gravity, otherwise your body will fall apart or bad things will happen like in WALL-E. You know, like the people that couldn't walk after they get out of it. Similar stuff. There's real stuff in movies out there. But the idea is that when you do artificial gravity, one of the easier ways to do it is to tether your spacecraft. So you have your spacecraft on one side and a counterweight on the other side. But when you're spinning to create this artificial gravity, it's really hard to do a maneuver or to get where you want to go. So it takes a lot of energy to unspin your tether, do your maneuver, and then respin it back up. So this paper that I wrote with a colleague who works at JPL, Dr. Damon Landau, and my advisor, we looked at how to adjust the thrust, so the amount of thrust and the angle of the thrust, in order to not have to spin down and keep your artificial gravity during maneuvers. So discipline-specific research. But one thing that I've really noticed is that having a colleague or a collaborator on the paper is a really good way to make sure you get stuff done. So I like to have colleagues on papers. So this is another paper that I wrote with Dr. Julio Benavides, who's sitting up here. Hi. And Dr. Gary Yale, who is not here today. But we looked at, we wrote a paper about how implementing systems engineering into an undergraduate engineering program has increased the, essentially benefited the outcomes for the senior capstone projects. And this is part of the transition from discipline-specific research into more of engineering education research. So essentially, we found that by implementing systems engineering, well, not me because I don't teach capstone, but the other people on the paper, they found that there were positive scopes in the changes of the scope of the capstone project, so they got to be larger, and the educational experiences were definitely positive. And student feedback from former students show that the experiences that they see in our capstone classes here mimic those that are in industry. And this is a capstone class, which I think was the fall or spring of 2015. Yes, that was before I was here, so I don't actually know any of them. I also looked at, I wrote a paper, or did a presentation with Dr. Dina Battaglia. She's the director for the Center in Teaching and Learning Excellence. And in this paper, we looked at how physically moving classroom space or classroom tables affects immediacy and rapport on and student learning, or perceived student learning. So rapport is essentially how well students get along with you, and by having an increased level of rapport, you do get positive learning outcomes out of that. And then immediacy is kind of a way to create rapport with your students, and you can have both nonverbal and verbal immediacy. So I gave my poor students, guinea pigs, a survey, and they filled it out. And essentially, I had two different classrooms. One classroom was an AC1, the really, really big one. That was my first class on campus. Thanks, Mark. And that one, the tables were fixed. And in the other classroom, which was 52A, I believe, there's new tables in there which have wheels, and I really like that. I had the students physically move the tables and sit in groups during that classroom. And what we found was that there was a clear relationship between rapport and verbal immediacy compared to nonverbal immediacy. And having students sit in groups resulted in both verbal and nonverbal immediacy playing a role in rapport. And essentially, students that sat in groups reported greater rapport, and by reporting greater rapport, they also had greater perceived learning. So having students sit in groups, work in groups, you walk around the classroom, you get better student learning outcomes, and that's what we found from this. I've also worked with, actually this is a friend from undergrad. She's now, well, she will be in the fall, a assistant professor at Bucknell University in chemical engineering, and we decided that we really just wanted to talk to each other every 2 weeks because we were both new professors, and then we're like, let's do research. So we did research together. And since she's a chemical engineer and I'm in aerospace engineering, and we're both interested in engineering education, we wrote a paper essentially looking at how students create or determine engineering intuition. So we wrote homework problems in both cases, and we looked at how students performed on those specific kind of stretch homework problems. And so the idea behind this is that we wanted to create more engineering intuition. That's always the goal. And we found that sometimes students, they'll work out a problem, they'll finish it, and they'll be like, I did it, yay! And then it'll be some ridiculous answer, like they're going to be in an airplane going, I don't know, like 1,000 miles per hour. You're like, you didn't even look at those digits afterwards to even think about it. So this result was trying to see how students create engineering intuition. And so we looked at homework answers based on both correctness and the reasoning behind the answer that they got. And so essentially what we found in this paper was there was no really strong correlation with the factors that we looked at, which included internship experience, learning preferences, but we did maybe find some sort of a correlation between GPA. So this plot's kind of interesting because you can see the far left one's GPA of less than 3.0, and the white bar is people who didn't even answer. So apparently people who don't do well in school don't do their homework, and people who do well in school answer it and answer it correctly. So There we go. That's what we found. Really surprising. It's a shocker. So we found that high-achieving students are more likely to provide the correct answer on what we called more reach problems. And this year we've done a follow-on study looking more closely at internship experience and GPA and whether or not even more of a stretch problem would get similar results. And we're presenting that data this summer at a conference, at the American Society of Engineering Education Annual Conference in Columbus, Ohio. Woohoo! Should be exciting. So that's kind of transitioning from one role to another. And I put this on here because it's a transfer orbit. So it's got transfer on it. Yeah, I know. I changed it, Sarah. So this past year, I still do some discipline-specific research. Julie and I are working together on a project now. She's an undergraduate student. We're hoping to get started this summer. So I still have that on the back burner, but I'm also really interested in figuring out how students learn and making them learn better. That's always that's not even grammatically correct. So with that, I will take any questions that you guys have. Thank you. Oh, no.
Well, thank you very much for that. My question would be, when we're educating engineering students here, can you talk about the comparative value of nurturing intuition on the one hand versus applications of inductive and deductive logic on the other?
Well, I guess I would say that you could probably do a combination of both. But I mean, because engineering intuition is kind of thinking a little bit further into the problem, or as like the guy who's been at some company for 50 years, you like show him your results and he's like, oh, that's wrong. He just looks at the plot. So I guess engineering intuition, in terms of inductive and deductive reasoning, they're correlated. So we want to get students to think about a problem, to think about whether or not the result that they got was reasonable or ridiculous. So is it a good answer? You got an answer, but is it right or not? And how do I know? And that's kind of the step that you want students to take. So you want them to take one step further. That's the goal. So anything else? Okay. Oh, thanks, Brent.
I was trying to save you from a Dr. Bloom question, but you didn't call on me first, so. Because I would have asked you a simple question. You mentioned discipline-specific research. How important is it to continue discipline-specific research to be an effective educator?
I guess I wouldn't say that it's 100%. I mean, we've got a lot of faculty members here who are super focused on teaching. So I wouldn't necessarily say that doing discipline-specific research is something that you need to do in order to be an effective teacher. I think that you need to be aware of changes in your area, but that doesn't mean that you have to do research in that. That could just mean that you go to a conference, or you read papers, or you talk to your colleagues that are doing some interesting research. It doesn't specifically mean that you have to be doing the research yourself. That's my opinion, though. Oh, another Dr. Bloom. Jenna told me that I should just run away if you ask a question.
Well, the physics faculty and I discussed the following point. I'd like your opinion. One of your papers had the word gravity in it. Yeah. So my question about gravity would be, is gravity merely a hypothetical construct to explain observable phenomena, or does it actually have a material existence? That's my question.
Good thing I'm a physicist. I guess gravity, I guess I would say that, well, I would say that, I don't know if it's got a physical appearance, because you don't really think of gravity as like you run your hand underwater and there's like a physical force. It is a force, but we're so used to it that we don't feel it anymore. So if you talk to astronauts, a lot of things, what they realize when they come back to Earth after orbiting the Earth, they come back and they're like, you know what, the one thing I didn't realize was how strong gravity was, because I couldn't stand up for more than 45 minutes when I got back to Earth. So, I mean, in that essence, I think our bodies are so used to gravity that we don't feel it. So I guess I would say it's more of a physical item or phenomenon. I guess I'm a physicist. I am an engineer. We do applied physics and applied math. Any other questions? Okay, hold on. You need the microphone, Lisa.
Really, don't, but okay, sure.
It's for the recording.
Oh, got it, okay. So I just came out of my HU 335 class, which is Technology and Modern Civilization. Speaking on behalf of your technologically oriented colleagues, how do you incorporate that touchy-feely piece into engineering classes? So in my class, we talk about the impact of technology on society and the impact of society and culture on technology. So where does this fit into your teaching plan for enlightening students?
Thanks, Lisa. As an engineer, I hate the touchy-feely side of things. That would require feelings. So I guess, I guess a lot of what some people would classify as soft skills, but they're not soft skills because they're definitely necessary in order for you to succeed in any job. Would come across in a lab class that I teach, where I make them do presentations and create posters. They work in groups, so they have to talk to each other and they have to get each other's phone numbers. And if somebody did something and they don't have that data, then they have to talk to them. But okay, microphone.
I mean more in terms of in what you teach them about engineering, where does the social and cultural component come in terms of the how and why of what they're creating and designing?
I'm not there yet. This is my second year. Sorry. It's a good future goal. I guess we don't really, at least in my classes, we don't really talk about like what effect it would have on human society. But just put in that's a good idea. I mean, I don't let them fly animals in my high altitude balloon experiments. Otherwise, we'd have to fill out an IRB form for that, and it's just a little too much work. But yeah, other questions or okay? Oh, good. Okay, Sierra.
Since your current research with the what makes students more interested and more engaged, and you didn't find anything there besides smart kids who make good grades do their homework, where are you going to go next with that to find what makes good students do good and stuff?
That's a really good point. So I guess the consensus or the question is also like, why are only the good kids getting it? Like, why is it just them? And how can you phrase your question, or what can you do differently to hit the rest of the students that aren't necessarily there? Or it's just another excuse to talk to my friend from undergrad every other week and have conversations that are only 15 minutes about research. But yeah, so that would be like the next stage. Is always, whenever you do any sort of research, even if you get a negative result, you keep looking, and that still answers a question. It's just not necessarily maybe the answer that you hoped.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That was great.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Martin. Thank you very much, Dr. Jensen and family. And so this concludes our program for today.